All right, small town cop. We're gonna do a little Bible study. We're gonna be reading the parable of the seeds and the soils. I should say this is more the soils. The seeds stays the same. This is Matthew 13, and we're gonna start at verse 3. Jesus said many things to them in parables. A farmer went out to scatter seed. As he was scattering seed, some fell onto the path, and birds came and ate it. Others' seed fell onto rocky soil, where they were fell onto rocky ground where the soil was shallow. They sprouted immediately because the soil wasn't deep. The sun came up, it scorched the plants, and they dried up because they had no roots. Other seed fell among the thorny plants. The thorny plants grew and choked them out. Other seed fell on the good soil and bore fruit. In one case, a yield of 100 to 1. In another case, a yield of 60 to 1. In another case, a yield of 30 to 1. Everyone who has ears to hear, pay attention. Jesus' disciples came to him and said to him, "Why do you use parables when you speak to the crowds?" Jesus replied, "Because they haven't received the secrets of the kingdom of heaven, but you have. For those who have will receive more, and they will have more than enough. But as for those who don't have, even the little they have will be taken from them. This is why I speak to the crowds in parables. Although they see, they don't really see. And although they hear, they don't really hear or understand. What Isaiah prophesied has become completely true for them. You will hear, to be sure, but never understand. You will certainly see, but never recognize what you are seeing. For this people's senses have become calloused. They've become hard of hearing, and they've shut their eyes, so that they won't see with their eyes, or hear with their ears, or understand with their minds, and change their hearts and lives, that I may heal them. Happy are your eyes because they see, happy are your ears because they hear. I assure you that many prophets and righteous people wanted to see what you see and hear, but they didn't. Consider the parable of the farmer. Whenever people hear the word about the kingdom and don't understand it, the evil one comes and carries off what was planted in their hearts. This is the seed that was sown on the path. As for seed that was spread on rocky ground, this refers to people who hear the word and immediately receive it joyfully. Because they have no roots, they last only for a little while. When they experience distress or abuse because of the word, they immediately fall away. As for seed that was spread among thorny plants, this refers to those who hear the word, but the worries of this life and the false appeal of wealth choke the word, and it bears no fruit. As for what was planted on good soil, this refers to those who hear and understand, and bear fruit, and produce. In one case, 100 to 1, in another case, 60 to 1, and in another case, a yield of 30 to 1. So, if you're not familiar with that parable, it's one of the most popular parables. I heard it all the time growing up in church. And we're always taught, be good soil. And that's still true. As you can see, I've always underlined things in my Bible, and every time I read my Bible, I have a red pen with me in order to read and underline important things for me to remember, and for various different reasons, regardless of what I'm going through, or whether it's a historical note that I realize is referencing back here or something like that. But I've underlined here, but the worries of this life and the false appeal of wealth choke the word, and it bears no fruit. This is all talking about, you're receiving the gospel of salvation, the gospel to follow Jesus in good times and bad. Well, really, first is to follow Jesus in general. And the good soil does it in good times and bad, because you see here, it says, because there's no roots, they last only for a little while. When they experience distress or abuse because of the word, they immediately fall away. The seed that was spread amongst the thorny plants, this refers to those who hear the word, but the worries of this life and the false appeal of wealth choke the word, and it bears no fruit. So, hold on, drink my water. This one of those parables I think is explained very well, because it was Jesus, and I think his parables work obviously extremely well. I don't even know why I'm saying that. It takes the Spirit of God moving in you and you being willing to receive the word. For the long time, I read this as, the circumstances of your life. No, you can be of good soil and in terrible places. You can be of bad soil and grow up in church, or have all things life working out for you. But as soon as life gets hard, or you might get pressed about doing something or having to stick with something because that's what the gospel says to do, but it's lost its appeal for whatever reason, well, you're done with that. You're done with following the word when it's inconvenient. And that's just being a varying type of bad soil. And I think over here, it really speaks to us that we have. How true is it today that we won't? We're trying to deny what we see with our eyes about gender, about the basic facts of life now. You will hear, to be sure, but never understand, and you will certainly see, but never recognize what you are seeing. The senses have become calloused, so they won't see with their eyes. They've had their eyes shut. They won't hear with their ears. We see so much evil going on in the world right now. But by and large, the church doesn't want to. Christians, and say the church, I mean Christians, that includes me. I've got to do everything I can to speak out against that. I've not toot my own horn, but this past week I was talking to somebody about a job, and I was telling them, like, I'm not playing the gender game. Like, I don't care what the policy becomes, what the issue. I'm not going to be that guy. So this is the right direction it's heading. I'm not here for that. And those are stances that as Christians we're going to be called to take. When they experience distress or abuse because of the word, they immediately fall away. I don't want to be that guy. When life gets hard, I still want to be following Jesus more than I'm following anything else. I don't want my eyes to be shut, or my ears to not hear, and my mind not comprehend. I don't want my senses to be calloused. I want to be good soil, and I want everyone I can throw the gospel seed out to be good soil. And for you to be good soil, that means you have to be willing to acknowledge your sins and follow the gospel, follow Jesus in the good times and bad. When you like what it brings you and when you don't. There's a very popular falling away going on in the church. I'm putting air quotes because these people ain't Christians. That's not a church anymore. They're put in the revelational terms. Their lampstand's been removed. I heard this preacher this week saying, what if God worships us And it says that God worships us. He said the most blasphemous thing I've heard in a while, which, isn't that long ago. I've heard something else blasphemous, but, the most recent, most blasphemous thing. He said that worship has become too God-centered. It doesn't include our proclivities and our biases. And exactly. Yeah, worship is God-centered. The gospel living is God-centered. Really, worship has become too God-centered. And you got a church and the singers in his church saying, God, you worship us. Thank you for that. And I was just like, what? Of course, this is also a man who said that we've come to worship a white heteronormative Jesus. And I'm like, that's not in here. What are you talking about? It's this made up, this projection onto the Bible as what Jesus was. That's not in here. Nowhere in here does it say Jesus was white. Nowhere in here does it say Jesus was American. The word America isn't in here. Which, side note, in response to that video, I've seen a few people talk about it now. One of the commenters said, Paul needs to write some letters again. And it got me thinking, if Paul had to write letters to the American church, first American, he would need about 3 or 4, I would say. He would need about 3 or 4. Because we're killing babies. We're supporting idolatry and drugs, and our justice system is trash. I've worked for it most of my adult life. It is total trash. Both who they prosecute and who they don't. Because yes, there are times where officers should be prosecuted, and there's times when criminals should be prosecuted and held and had the book thrown at them, but because of their skin tone or because of sentiments of the community, they wanted to let somebody go, yada yada, to go do more crime, to appeal to sensitivities, because it's optics, bad optics. And God talks about having good justice system a lot back here, a whole lot. But yeah, if I would like to see Paul's, first, second, third American written to the American church, because yeah, it's bad. The fact that we have several pastors using this word and completely abandoning it from the pulpit, talking about Jesus, and saying as representative of Jesus, I support this, that, and the other. I'm like, you don't represent Jesus then. You can't say you represent Jesus and you're following Jesus when you're doing and supporting the exact thing he says not to do. And that's pretty broad, because there's a lot of stuff he says not to do. There's a lot of things he says to do. And that goes from all kinds of sinful, idolatrous problems, from sexual perversion, divorce being rampant, murder of children. Paul would have a lot to say to us, a whole lot to say. But tonight I want us to encourage you guys to be good soil. There's a lot going wrong with our country, with our church, with our families and all that jazz. But even still, you be good soil. And I'm speaking to myself too. Even still, you be good soil. Keep following after God. Keep forgiving those you need to forgive. Keep repenting of your own sin. And keep faithful to speaking the truth in love, standing on what the Word says is right and the Word says is wrong. Standing against sin, but loving the sinner. Keep being good soil. Even when the distresses of the world come up, the possibility of wealth comes up, the worries of what your job. Like I've said before in a video, it's going to come to a point very, very soon. In fact, for several people, not even soon, it's now. It is now. Several people across the West, across America, have lost jobs and try to shut down churches, have shut down churches while letting porn shops stay open and bars stay open and all these other things. Because that's how little we view the value of Christianity right now, the value of the gospel, the value of God. So this is a short one tonight. Maybe I'm just tired. Be that good soil. Be that good soil. Act like Paul did write that letter. Make it, First American 5-10 in your head. Be that good soil still. All of it, he didn't need to write another letter because we're doing the exact same crap that they were doing here. Same sin, different decade, different century. Be that good soil. Do whatever you got to do. Stand for Christ. Stand in the gap, praying for the lost. Keep repentant, humble hearts. And keep forgiving. I stress that because I got to keep doing it. And the Lord's Prayer, it says, forgive us as we forgive those who trespass against us, as those who sin against us. And he says, if you can't forgive, you won't be forgiven. Be forgiving. Be loving enough to people that you tell them the truth and stand on that, even if the world, that person, hates you for it. I wrote something in my paper recently that says, that I told I always title it to the church. It says, and I got this from John Lovell, if you're more in love with what somebody thinks of you than their eternity, that is hateful. That's not exactly what I said. That's basically the idea of it. It's, in fact, I'll end with just reading this. If you are a people pleaser, you naturally want people to feel at ease. Nice people naturally want others to feel loved. And telling somebody the truth about their sin and eternity, a people pleaser doesn't do that. You don't want to do that because it's upsetting to someone. You want them to feel good, right? Perhaps the kernel of it is hospitality and kind, but there's a far uglier side to that. You're hiding the gospel. The love you have isn't actually for the other person, it's for yourself. It's not loving others, it's actually loving yourself. Because you don't want to tell them the hard truth because you don't want them to think badly about you, even for their salvation. It's not nice enough. It's emotional justification for your actions instead of admitting your sin in that. Your idolatry to self. You love the feeling you get from their acceptance more than telling them the thing that is destroying their lives. You are showing you're more concerned about what they think of you now than their eternity. That is evil. Be good soil. Get in your word, stay in your word, read. Fight temptation and run from youthful lusts. 2 Timothy 2:22.